Hello, people. How you doing tonight? We are really looking for this forward to this show because once before I had Wade on of Crime and Entertainment, and his site he has a lot of interesting people on it. His site's growing fast, and the last time I interviewed Wade, James wasn't with me, so but we're not going to interview him about his channel tonight. We're going to interview him about he was charged with murder, and we're gonna play a 911 call that's very, it's if you listen to it, you'll get an idea about how serious this was. And I'd like to welcome you back to the show, my man.
Thank you. It's good to be here. And when you and I done this interview, this whole situation was kind of wrapping up, and being finalized. So I didn't mention it then. I knew the time would come to where I would, be freely to talk about it. And I had a couple of agreements with some other shows to do those first. But then guys that, like yourself and some other people that I was going to reach out to, I agreed to come on and tell the story. So it was, and I never spoke about it before. Nobody knew unless I told them, which was very minimal, like very few people in this whole podcast family, if you want to call it that, maybe dysfunctional family. Not many people knew about it at all. So I kept it very much under wraps because obviously for a long time it was still active up until November of last year.
And so you must have still been nervous that you were looking at a murder charge.
As hell, yes, yes.
And James, you want to ask him something about that before we start?
No. So just so people know, I know we'll talk about the case. So it finally got, the disposition was November of last year, right? The final disposition of a release, right?
Yeah, I think like end of October, 1st of November. I forget. I probably should know the exact date because it was definitely a huge weight lifted off. But I think it was like the weekend before Halloween or right around Halloween.
Right. And it started April 8th of 2018, right?
Correct. That was when the incident itself happened.
Yeah. So what 4.5 years that you had to go through this. So,
and what I'm going to do before we get into this, I'm just going to play it's a 9-minute call. I'll stop it. But I want people to listen to this call because it really explains to you. The 911 call says it all. It explains that something horrible happened here. And then when we're done with the 911 call, we're gonna talk about if Wade could do it over again, what would he do?
Where did you shoot him? I'm not really sure. He come at me, he hit me in the face, and I shot him in the chest 2 times. Okay, is he breathing? Right now he's breathing. Right now he's breathing. Are you okay? Right now he's breathing. 137 Decatur Drive, Somerville, 29486. In the name of, please. Don't hang up. Okay, I'm not. Okay, you shot him. What kind of gun do you have? I have a 9mm Smith & Wesson. It was in my back pocket. We had been getting along all night. He come at me. He hit me in the face. He tried to keep hitting me. I grabbed the gun and I shot him twice in the chest to get him away from me. He's laying on the floor right now. All right, what is your name, sir? My name is Wade Williams. William, what was it? Wade Williamson. Okay. Okay, is that him I can hear? Yes. Okay. We were fine. We were okay. We were together here talking, and he started punching me. He punched me in the face. I grabbed the gun, and I shot him. Have you got somebody on the way? Liam, are you okay? Can you hear me? Liam, can you hear me? Liam. Liam, can you hear me? Liam. I shot him 2 times in the chest. He come after me. He was trying to hit me. He was trying to hurt me. I didn't have any choice but to fucking shoot him.
Okay. Here we have EMS and first responders and the police coming, okay?
Okay.
But don't hang up with me, though, okay? What is his name?
His name is Liam Vernon. Liamvernon. I don't know what I need to do to help keep him alive. He's got 2 bullet wounds, 1 to the chest, 1 to the stomach.
Can you get a clean towel and apply pressure?
A clean towel? Yes. Yes, ma'am, I can. I'm sorry, I did not want to do this shit. He come after me, god damn it.
Is there anybody else in the house?
No, ma'am, it's just me and him. We've been here for a couple of hours.
How long ago did you just shoot him?
Yes, I just did it.
Okay. Okay, where is the gun right now?
It's sitting on the counter.
Okay, can you secure the gun so the officers get there?
Yes, ma'am, it's secured. It's unloaded. It's unloaded. When the officers get here, it's unloaded.
Okay, so the gun's going to be unloaded on the counter?
The gun is unloaded when they get here.
Okay, when the officers get there, they're going to need you to come outside with your hands up, okay?
Huh?
I said when the officers get there, they're going to need you to come out with your hands up, okay?
Okay, that's fine. When we're talking, he come after me. I had no choice. He hit me in the face. He punched me. I grabbed the gun. I shot twice, and I stopped.
Okay, what's he doing right now? Is he still breathing okay?
Right now, he's not breathing.
You said he's not breathing?
He doesn't look like it. He's not breathing up and down.
Okay, can you get your face close to his and see if he is breathing? See if you can see him?
I'm right here in front of him. He's making noises. He's making noises.
He is still talking?
No, he's not talking. He's just making noises. Liam, can you hear me, Liam? Liam, can you hear me? Liam, can you hear me? Liam, can you hear me, Liam? He's making noises, but he's not responsive.
Okay.
I don't know what to do.
Okay, they're coming.
Okay, I mean, I didn't know what to do. He come at me, he was fucking hitting me. I shot him. I don't know what the fuck to do.
Yes, sir. Well, you did the right thing by calling 911.
All right, I mean, hell, I didn't know what the fuck to do. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Okay, we do have an officer in the area, so just hang tight, okay? They're coming.
Let him fucking come. I don't know. We were fucking talking. He fucking come at me. I didn't have any choice. I didn't have any fucking choice. He hit me in the jaw. What the fuck, man?
Okay, you still holding pressure?
Yeah, yes. The pressure's down. He's not making any noise now. He was in the beginning, but he's not now.
You said he's doing what?
He's not doing nothing.
Okay, so he said, has he stopped breathing?
I don't know. He's making noises, but he ain't. I mean, his chest ain't going up and down.
Okay. So he is still making
I'm going to
noises.
open the door for the cops. I'm going to open the door for the cops.
Okay, make sure your hands
The
are
front door's open.
okay.
They can come on in. You tell them they can come on in. I didn't want to fucking do this.
Is the front door open or just unlocked?
The front door is open. They can just come right the fuck in. He come at me, man. I don't know what the fuck, man. He come at me. He fucking hit me. We've been here talking. We've been here cool. Liam, can you hear me? Liam. Come here. Liam.
Sir, can you hear me?
Liam. Yeah, I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, our officer is there. Can you step outside with your hands up?
Yep, ma'am. I can step outside.
Okay. Go ahead and do that. Just put the phone down.
All right. I mean, my phone's in my ear, but I'll step outside with my hands
Okay.
up.
All right, go ahead.
I'm outside with my hands up. He's in the kitchen. All right. Well, I'm on the phone just there. He's telling me to let the phone down okay? Okay, I'll look back here and let you in. Yeah. No. I don't have any.
Okay. Well, that was, how many times have you listened to that call?
This time here would probably make 3.
And what do you think of when you hear that call? I mean, does everything rush back to you?
Yeah. Obviously just, life-changing scenario, life-changing moment, life-changing events for all parties involved, not just mine. He had a family also, people that cared for him. I've got people that care for me, and both families were affected.
And he was suffering. He was in the war. I mean, he was there when things were real heavy in Iraq. It's obvious that he suffered from PTSD, and it was a big factor in his life, wasn't it? Up to that point.
From what I know, I'll be honest, Lee, I don't know a ton. I didn't know a ton about him before. I learned obviously a little bit after everything happened, but one of the stories that he shared with me that night was we were sitting in my car, and it was before we entered my home for the first time. And he shared a story about a bracelet that he was wearing on his wrist, that was in representation of somebody that was in combat with him, which I guess is normal. I've heard people say that is a common thing, that they'll wear a bracelet with either their name or initials. And the story that he told me was they were together in combat, and this individual got shot in the head, and he was doing what he thought was right to try to keep him alive. The Army said that it wasn't, and that's why he got, I forgot the term, but that's why he got kicked out of the Army.
So he basically got separated from the military then.
Yes, but that wasn't actually accurate. What really did happen was he was intelligent, so he wasn't necessarily like beside this guy in the field. He was intelligence. He was somewhere else. He was giving this guy intel as far as, go in here, go there. And the directions or the instructions that he gave him led this guy into being shot in the head by the enemy. So I'm sure it probably still bothered him just the same, because technically I would think anybody in that situation would blame themselves. He just made it seem to me that night when he was telling me the story as though he was right there beside him, which wasn't really accurate.
And James, what would you like to ask him?
Yeah, so just about the case. So there's a lot we could go over, but is there anything from a civil standpoint that's still outstanding? I know criminally this has been, the dispositions occurred. What about civil? Is there any? Okay. Okay. And did they do
typically kind of like, I'm sure everybody remembers the O.J. Simpson trial, when you go to trial, and even if you're found not guilty, then you can get some civil actions. And what this was going to be done, the next step to do was to have an immunity hearing or a Duncan hearing. which is basically to prove that I did act in self-defense.
And
Once that is proven, then they lose all rights to a civil suit. Now, we didn't have to go that far because the charges were ultimately dropped.
What I like to ask you is, okay, we got you up to the part where the body's in the kitchen, the police come in, you go outside. How did the police treat you when you first came out?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, this is the first time I'd ever been in cuffs in my life. So, I mean, to me, it was somewhat normal. I mean, the first arriving officer told me, he was like, "You're not under arrest." He's like, "I'm just placing these handcuffs on you until we figure out everything that's going on." And he put handcuffs on me. Another officer arrived somewhat about the same time in an SUV, and they put me in the back of that SUV, and then they went in the house. I didn't really speak to anyone else for, I can't tell you the exact amount of time. It felt like forever, but at one point an officer did come over and say that I was being placed under arrest. She read me my rights and then asked me if I wanted to ask any questions. And I told her no, not without a lawyer. After I said that, she left. And at this point, it's probably got to be at least an hour, hour and a half, maybe more. I did tell one of the deputies because I live in a pretty crowded like subdivision. Like there's houses every 5 feet. You know, you go to your side of your house and you lay down flat on the ground, you're almost touching your neighbor's house, you know. So there's a lot of houses in my neighborhood. And this happened around 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. So by the time this is taking place, we're probably at 8:39. So we got multiple cop cars, ambulances, big SUVs. They're lining this whole street. So you got partially people maybe getting up and going to church because this was a Sunday morning, partially people just being nosy, riding by, wanting to see what's going on. And obviously so. I mean, this isn't something that's a regular occurrence around here. But I did tell one of the deputies that was walking, because by this time there's a lot of them. There's not just those two, there's probably 8 or 9. I told one of them that I had to use the restroom. And he told me, he said, "You're going to have to hold it." And I was like, "My man, there's not going to be no holding. Like, I've got to go. It can be in the yard. It can be in this car, or we can go in the house. But like, I have got to go." And he eventually came. He let me out of the car. We went in the house. They allowed me to use the restroom. And then they took all the clothes that I had on at that time. I want to say they took some pictures. They done the GSR test on the wrist. And then they actually allowed me to go to a friend's house around the corner until they finished what they had to do there. So, and I didn't even realize this till one of the podcasts that I did before. Technically, you know, I was put in the car. I was told I wasn't under arrest initially. Then I was told I was under arrest. Then I was allowed to leave and go to a friend's house.
Well, and it was how much longer before they officially charged you?
It was about 2 days later. This was all Sunday morning. When they came to the friend's house to tell me that I was allowed to go back to the residence, he obviously again asked me when could I come in and answer some questions. And I said, "Well, you know, we'll run it through my lawyer. He'll figure it out." He asked me who my lawyer was. I gave him the guy's name who I had at the time, who was actually he was a divorce attorney, but he was the only one I had. I didn't have a criminal lawyer on speed dial. I'd never been in trouble before, so I didn't have one of those. He knew that lawyer. And he said that he would call him Monday morning and they would facilitate some sort of an arrangement for me to give a statement. Monday morning, we did that. Monday went by, Tuesday went by, and then Wednesday evening, they called the lawyer and let them know that they would be filing charges for murder.
Okay. Now, James, before I take it to another place, you want to ask a question?
Yeah. So I was just, no, not this point. Let's go ahead and continue.
Okay. So now we're going to get to the point of why this happened. Okay. So you and this gentleman, you and your wife, you were going through some personal issues in your life. Am I correct? And your wife and you broke up.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on how deep in the weeds you want to get, but there was a few incidences in my life that had me kind of not really thinking very clearly. I had a very bad car wreck that kind of changed around my working job at the time. I still stayed with the company that I was at, but I lost my position. And I loved the job that I had at the time. So that was kind of heavy on me. And then I wound up having a friend that committed suicide, who unfortunately me and another guy that's really kind of an integral part of this story happened to be nearby. And we were one of the first two people in the house. And that was a pretty bad time because it was a really rough scene. I had never seen anything quite like that before. So it had me really not in a good place, I guess would be the best way to put it. And it did lead to me and my wife splitting up. And this is a point that I want to clarify, because on the few shows that I've done, and I know everybody is going to make their own assumptions, but you know, I told my wife specifically that I thought we were done, that I thought we had tried everything and exhausted every option that we had, and that I felt it was best if we go our separate ways. And I told her, I said, you know, you're free to see whoever you want. My only stipulation is if you do that and you start to see someone, then I'm not going to continue to pay the bills here where you live. Now, granted, if she would have been a you know what about it, she could have done it and it's probably still made me do the bills. That was just what I wanted to happen.
Right.
And she agreed. And then when she did decide to meet someone, and I knew she would. My wife's a very attractive woman. She's very smart. She brings a lot to the table. So I knew if she went out and was actively looking, she would find someone.
And she found Liam, I guess.
Yes, she did. And once they started seeing each other, and she notified me, the 1st of November, she then moved out of the house that we shared into another house. See, the way that the areas that I live, you have like one community, and then you probably have like 5 or 6 subdivisions within that community. So she moved into a different subdivision than I was, but still in the same community. So a little bit further back in the area where I lived at. And they lived together through November, through December. And then he actually left that home. They were still kind of talking, but he didn't live there permanently after January.
So it was somewhat of a temporary relationship they were having.
I mean, I don't know what their relation. I don't know if they had plans for it to be better. I mean, everybody knows when you first meet someone, everything's great. You know, there's no problems. You're in the honeymoon phase, and you know, I can't really. We haven't really discussed everything. We've kind of like left that where it was and moved forward with us. But from what I can gather and what we talked about at the time, things obviously started out good, which is normally first early in relationships do. And then it kind of, everybody's true colors, I guess, started to show in one way or another. And so around the end of December, me and my wife still weren't really talking at this time. I mean, we were cordial, but we weren't, you know, hanging out, having phone conversations. It was as simple as, okay, you're going to get, you know, your son this time. Yeah, I'm gonna get him. Okay. You know, talk to you later. That was it. Well, when it come to Christmas, we were trying to figure out exactly how we were going to handle things as far as, you know, who gets the kids, because this was been the first Christmas that we'd have been going through this. And that was kind of the point to where it was kind of a little bit more than just cut and dry. You know, it was, so how's things going with you? Well, not too good. We got this going on. Well, how's things going with you? Well, you know, this, that, and the other. And that kind of, I guess, resparked, if you will, a little bit of interest. We still didn't think that we were going to get back together at that point, but we spent a little time together over the Christmas holidays. We would speak to each other a little bit more than normal. And I knew that they were still seeing each other, but they were having issues. She knew that I was still seeing other people. So we didn't immediately say, hey, we're going to get right back together. In March, right around Easter, we did make the decision that we were going to go to her parents and stay that week of spring break, which we did. And up there is when we made the decision. We're like, all right, if we're going to do this, then we got to do it full force. I'll get you moved back in. You know, you tell him it's over. I'll cut off anything that I had going, and we'll give this another true shot. And around that time, before we had took up there, I'd actually had a doctor's procedure on my back where they go in and burn the nerve endings away from the spine. This was due to the car wreck that I mentioned earlier. So I was pretty sore around this time. And so we do the trip. We tell everybody in her side of the family that we're going to, you know, run this back and, you know, give it another go. Once we come back late Thursday night. The agreement, or late Friday night, excuse me. The agreement was she was going to tell him Friday night. And then I was going to figure out how things went Saturday morning because my son had a soccer game.
So she was going to tell him that you guys were going to get back together.
Yeah, she was going to tell him. That was the original plan. She was going to tell him Friday night that we were going to reconcile and that they were going to, you know, cut ties and everybody go their separate ways. Well, when I seen her Saturday morning, I didn't talk to her that night. Obviously I was curious of how things went, but also I was exhausted because I was, you know, like I said, not feeling the best physically. So when we go Saturday morning, obviously my first thought was, all right, well, what happened? How did he take it? And she said, well, he come in, said he wasn't feeling well. He took something and he went straight to bed. I didn't even have a chance to tell him. I'm going to tell him today once he gets up. So I was like, okay. So I knew that was planning on happening. So we do the soccer game. We come back home. And then she tells me that she told him he didn't take it very well. He left, but at that point he hadn't left for good because he had left a lot of stuff there, including a dog that he had that was his personal dog. And this was probably like 5:30 in the afternoon, but she had came to the house and told me what all had happened. And I was like, well, you know, if he hadn't come back, you know, I asked her, I can't remember if I asked if you told him why you did it or why you were doing it or not at that point. I think she did say that, you know, she was going to try to run things back with me, but regardless, she knew he was coming back. It wasn't like he was never coming back at that point.
Right.
And so I said, well, you know, if he comes by here, this could cause some problems. So maybe you need to go back home because you don't want him showing up if you're not there and he could destroy the place. And she would have been on the hook for it because the lease was in her name. Mm-hmm. So she goes back. And at that point, I didn't talk to her again until probably 12 o'clock that night through my daughter's phone after she had gotten off work, because he indeed did come back. Things did get pretty violent there. He wound up breaking her phone, roughing her up a little bit.
Did he rough her up or push her or hit her?
Yeah, he headbutted her. She had a bruise on her head. He pushed her around a little bit. He knocked some holes in the walls. He broke her phone, so she had no way to contact me. And I didn't get really clear clarification on what was going on, like I said, until my daughter got there. Once that happened, once he done all that, he made her get in the car and drive to my neighborhood, which is, when I say that, it's not a far drive. You're talking 2 minutes from their neighborhood to my neighborhood. He was making her drive around and look for me. Well, I wasn't home, and she knew I wasn't home because I told her where I was going to go. It was another friend of mine's house in the subdivision. Well, she rode by the house of a mutual friend of ours who our sons were friends. This was the guy that I was mentioning earlier that me and him went into the house where the guy committed suicide at the same time. So we knew each other, and he knew what was going on to a certain extent. He might have didn't know everything, but he knew that we were seeing each other again and thinking about reconciling. He knew about the split. He knew about everything. Me and this guy were close. And so he sees her car pull up to the edge of his like driveway, but nobody gets out. So he walks down there and he's like, hey guys, what's going on? And he said he could tell that my wife was visibly upset and that the guy in the passenger seat said, oh, nothing. We're just riding around looking for Chip because when we find him, I'm going to fucking kill him. Now, I want to clarify that I did not know that that was said until after the fact. And when I say after the fact, I mean after the whole incident. I actually found that out when I was reading some of the reports of interviews that he gave the police. Now, he apparently come back to that house. That guy got him to stay there and talk. And then he agreed to go back to the house where my wife was renting, get his car and come back there. In between that time, he phones me up and he's like, hey, are you home? And I was like, no, I'm not home. I'm, around the corner. He said, well, something's going on with, them. I don't want to mention my wife's name, but he said something's going on with them. He's like, I'm getting Liam to stay here. He's like, so if you ride by and see his car here in my driveway, don't stop. I don't want anything going on here, but like, he's pissed. Well, I knew why he was pissed. And I said, well, I got a pretty good idea why he's upset. I was like, but I'm not going to stop there. I'm coming from the other way. I'm not even going to ride by there. Was
this guy an intimidating looking guy? I mean,
yeah. He was a pretty intimidating looking fellow. I mean,
he's a big guy.
He was pretty big. At the time he was on a cycle of steroids. Right. They actually collected steroids that night that everything happened. And we kept receiving packages after he was deceased from the other address. So he was a lot bigger than me.
Yeah. And was there any And so that night, had he been drinking or taking any narcotics?
He had apparently, I guess, taken prescription pills. I don't think it was anything that he didn't have prescriptions for. He was diagnosed with PTSD, but it was quite a lot. Like, I want to say some of the Prozac and stuff that he was on was a very high dosage, enough to probably put a regular man down. But he was on that. He did shoot 2 vials of steroids, and he had been drinking. I didn't know at the time how much, because I mean, unless you know somebody pretty good, you don't know. Some people can drink all night and you not even know they're drinking.
Exactly.
But to me, he seemed fine. But again, I didn't know this guy personally. But when the blood alcohol level and everything came back, he was about 3 times above the legal limit.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. And then I guess probably at that point, when he goes back to get his car, he calls me, tells me what's going on. I tell him, okay, I'm not going to come by, just let me know how it goes. Well, at this point, because he said my wife looked upset, I'm trying to call her. I can't get her, texting her, can't get her. So I do go back to my home. I'm there. I remember pretty vividly, there was a UFC fight going on that night. So I was watching the UFC fight. I think I even made a post about it on Facebook. And then my daughter calls, or her phone call.
And how old is your daughter?
At this time, she was 18, just turned 18.
Okay, so you got they're adults, your children, just about.
Well, my son was probably 8 at the time.
Okay.
So he was a lot lesser in age. My daughter was a senior in high school.
Okay.
And she worked at a restaurant that was also in this subdivision. So by the time she got off work, she was home pretty quick. She kind of got a watered down version of what was going on. My wife obviously didn't want to tell her everything that was happening, but she used her phone to call me, and she was like, hey, I'm fine. She's like, he did break my phone, but she's like, he's with Jamie. Jamie's going to cool everything over. And, that's where he's at. And I was like, okay, well, as long as y'all are good, that's all I care about. And that was really it. We hung the phone up. To my understanding, Jamie was supposed to, or Liam was supposed to stay at Jamie's that night. That was what I took from that conversation. And then I would say probably about 1:30, my phone goes off. It is Liam, and he asked if I'm awake. I responded, yes. And he said, do you care if we talk? And then he followed that up with another text, and it was, I don't want to fight. I don't want any drama. He's like, just man to man, me and you talk. He's like, I feel like I'm being lied to. And he said, I feel like you'll tell me the answers to the questions that I'm wanting to know. And he says, if you're more comfortable, we can meet at Jamie's house. And so that did make me more comfortable. Jamie was a lot more my friend than he was his. I mean, Jamie was my friend. He just knew Liam. And so I agreed to do that. And at some point in that, he did leave Jamie's, go back home. I guess something else started, or I say go back home. He went to my wife's. Something else started going on. Jamie was called. He went and picked him up. And that was apparently, I guess, how he got him to leave. Was he said, I want to talk to Chip. And Jamie said, well, if he'll come down to the house, we can talk. And so that's how I got brought out of the house, and I went down there. And that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted to know, had we been, I guess, talking or seeing each other prior to him finding out about it that night. And in no uncertain terms, I told him, I was like, well, at the end of the day, she's still my wife. So it's really none of your fucking business. But to answer your question, no, because I didn't want to rile him up and get him pissed off and send him back over there where something else could happen later on.
And you had no idea at this point that he had these drugs in his system, that he was on roids and all that stuff. You had no idea.
And did you know about him headbutting your wife and all that?
She never told me that took place. I didn't know. I didn't know about that. She did tell me he broke her phone.
Right.
I didn't know about the physical stuff. And no, I didn't know any. I didn't know he was on steroids. I mean, I knew that he was a pretty active guy as far as the gym, but I didn't know he was on steroids. My wife didn't even know he was on steroids. She actually seen him doing something with a needle that night once he left, I think, to come to Jamie's the second time. When I met him, that's, I believe, when he actually shot those, and she seen him in the trash can. He left.
What was his work? What type of job did he have?
At the time, I really don't know if he had one, to be honest. I know for a while he had a government job. Something happened with that. He lost it. And at the time, I want to say he may have been working with some sort of company at the port, because I live in the Charleston area. Something where they would drive cars onto ships when they were getting shipped somewhere. I know he was working somewhere in that kind of field, but as far as like maybe what he was doing exactly, I don't know.
And did you have, up to that point, did you have any idea that he had stays at mental hospitals? No,
I did. Well, I think my wife may have told me that he had done a stint at there. Now, I thought there was only one. Was there more than one?
Well, no, it was one, but it was a attorney. I read his whole thing. He never had no criminal records, but he did have some issues with work, and he did spend some time in the mental institution.
Yeah, that's the one in Alabama.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she did tell me that. It was a little bit after the fact. It was something that she found out much later.
Right.
Obviously, he didn't disclose a lot of those details. You know,
when it comes down to, Wade, you had no idea really that you were walking into a minefield with this guy.
No, I mean, me and him had seen each other one time. We obviously knew about each other, but we had seen each other as far as me and him physically being in the same place at the same time at a gas station. That's pretty much the first gas station you get to from our neighborhood. Now there's many of them. Back then, this was kind of an up and coming area, so there wasn't a lot of gas stations. That was the first nearest one to here. So we both wound up at the pumps one day. We kind of talked. It wasn't necessarily what I would call friendly, but it wasn't, you know, physical, like, you know, talking shit either. It was kind of just like, you know, so I want to say his words was something along the lines of, you know, how do you think all this is going to play out? And I was like, and I jokingly said, I said, you don't have any idea the roller coaster you're on right now, buddy. I was like, you'll learn. And I was meaning that in the ride he was with for my wife. And so it was a joke, and he laughed about it. And he said, no, I got a pretty good idea. And I said, well, let me know how that ride is when you get done with it. And it was more or less there was a serious tone, but it was a joking exchange.
And how did you start heading back toward your house with him? Why did that happen?
So when we're there, this conversation in this garage lasts for maybe 3 hours, but it wasn't all about that. Like, that was the initial conversation. Once he asked a few questions, I gave some answers that appeased him. That conversation kind of died. And it really, at that point, wound up being 3 dudes in a garage talking about all kinds of shit. They were talking about some of their military past. A friend of mine was in the Coast Guard. I think he was in the Army. And I mean, it was really all different types of stuff. It was stuff about our kids. I mean, it was just really, at that point, it was 3 random dudes hanging out in a garage, just some weird circumstances, I guess you could.
Right.
And so at about 4:30-ish, 5, somewhere along that neighborhood, Jamie, the guy whose house we were at, he was like, look, he's like, I'm shutting it down. He said, are you staying here, or, you know, what are you going to do? And he was talking to Liam, and Liam said, well, I'll just get Chip to run me home. And so he was like, he looked at me, said, are you good with that? And I'm like, yeah, we're cool. Everything's cool. And so he shut his garage thinking that that's what I was going to do. Well, we go to get in the car, and he's like, man, he said, if I go home, he said, all we're going to do is fight. He said, I'm not really ready to go home. He said, do you care if we go back to your place? And I was a little apprehensive at first, but you got to understand, we've at this point been 2 hours and nothing's came up. Nothing's been heated. Nothing's been hostile, you know? And so from where I live to Jamie's house is literally 7 houses. So when I pull out of his driveway, we're talking 15 seconds and I'm in my driveway. So it's not like we had, you know, 20 minutes to drive. And so we leave that driveway, we pull into mine. And that's when he tells me the story that I was mentioning to you guys earlier about the guy. And after he gets done telling the story, he is crying. He's crying in the car. He's shedding tears. And I really, at this point, kind of feel bad for him because he's got this on his mind. He's getting the boot, you know, to top it off. He doesn't really have any family in the area, so there's not going to be anybody to go to. And I'm thinking maybe this guy just really needs someone to talk to. So we get out, we go in my house, and we're in my house for probably 2 hours. I forgot the security system I had at the time. It was long before Ring had kind of took a stranglehold, everything.
Did you have a gun? Did you have a gun on you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you have that gun on you with the thought maybe I need this gun on me before you met with him?
Well, I carry my gun with that thought all the time.
Okay, so you're a regular carrier. Okay.
Yeah,
concealed.
I like to clear up too, because everybody's like, "Oh, why did you have your gun on you that night?" I had it on me every time I left the house.
There's a lot of people like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been a licensed CWP carrier for probably 2 or 3 years at that point. The weapon that I had was a 9mm that I'd bought probably 5 or 6 years prior to that. It was my carry weapon. I had been pulled over with that weapon. Numbers had been run on that weapon. There was police reports where they had ran that weapon with those serial numbers from that gun. So there was nothing out of the ordinary for that night.
Did Liam know you had the gun on you?
That'll come up in a little bit. I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know.
Okay.
You know, he didn't mention anything about it at that garage. He didn't mention anything about it when we got to the house. And I'll kind of fast forward to that. So we get into my house, and he's kind of looking around, and you know, just kind of, I guess, I didn't know if he had ever been in my house, because that was my whole thing, is when he first started seeing my wife, I just didn't like the idea of me paying bills and another dude in my house. And he's looking around, and he's like, see, he's like, I'm looking around. He's like, cause I've never been here. He's like, I know you thought that I was here before, you know, she moved out. He said, but I was never here. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was just kind of explaining to him, you know, I've been changing a bunch of shit, just trying to make the place different. So it didn't, you know, so a lot of the memories didn't, you know, still stick around. And we got on the subject of talking about my son and some of his friends, and a particular mom of one of his friends. She said that he overheard her saying something about tattoos and how she didn't like tattoos and she thought they were trashy and all this. And he was like, well, has she ever said anything to you? He's like, you got tattoos? And I was like, no. I said, I'm covered in them. So I throw up my arms and I pull down my shirt, and that one right here. I pulled down that one and showed him that one. Well, when I did, if you look, keep everything's opposite. If you look right here, you can see a scar. It's an open heart scar. Well, he's seen that, and he's like, damn, you know, what happened there? And I said, oh, it's an open heart surgery scar. I said, I had an open heart surgery in high school. And so he reaches to the bottom of my shirt and lifts it up like that, you know, to see the whole scar all the way down. And he was like, damn. And he's like, you know what, man? And he put the shirt down. Well, when he lifted it up, that's why I'm saying it was clear view. It was on my hip. The only way he didn't see it is if he just didn't look. But I don't know really how you would have missed it. He didn't mention it. He didn't say anything about it. He just dropped the shirt back down. And you know, if you've been around guys that, you know, had a drink or two, they'll do that thing where they kind of bear hug you and pick you up a little bit. And that's what he did. He was like, man, he's like, bring it in, man, bro hug. And he done that and set me right back down immediately. And he said, you know, if these situations wasn't what they were, he said, I got a feeling you and I probably could have been great friends. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. Because at that point, you know, that's the most I'd ever talked to him. And we didn't seem like two very different people. I mean, it wasn't like he was totally one way, I was totally another way. We seemed to have a lot of things in common. And so he asked me where the bathroom was. I pointed him to the bathroom. He goes, he uses it. Now at this point, I'm standing in my kitchen and I've got my back to my stove. Now this whole time since we've been together, my wife knew that I was going to see him at that other person's house, but I hadn't texted her since. So she didn't know what was going on. So I checked my phone and I seen there was a couple of missed calls or missed texts like, hey, what's up? You know, everything good. And so I sent her a text. I'm like, everything's good. You know, we're at my house. Put the phone back in the pocket. He comes around the corner. And as soon as he comes around the corner, he takes his left hand, throws it up under me like that. And it's kind of like pushing me up. It's not really a choke, like he's choking me, but he's more or less trying to control me. So it's like that. And I go up onto the stove. I'm trying to work my way off of it because this is just out of nowhere. He didn't say a word. He didn't say a peep. He didn't say shit. He grabs me. He's got me going up and he says, I'm going to fucking kill you. And I'm still trying to process all this because it's happened so fast. Nothing has been like this, you know, at all. Not to this level. And so I was able to kind of slide down off the stove because I have a glass top stove. I was able to slide down and get back on my feet. He tries to come up with his knee to get me in the side. I kind of turned my body as best I could. And then at that point, you know, you've heard people use the expression, he had that look in his eye.
Mm-hmm.
He had a look in his eye like that hadn't been there all night. It looked like eye colors that I really can't even, it looked like a cross between white and gray. I haven't seen anything in anybody's eyes since then. Really hope I don't ever for as long as I live. And he just, it was something about it, the way he said it. I believed him. I believed him 100%. And I told him, I said, if you don't get the fuck off me, I'm going to shoot you. And as I say that, he's still kind of forcing me back. He's trying to get me back into the corner because my kitchen's not very wide. So he comes with his right hand, he comes across, and I see it coming, and I try to move a little bit so he clips the bottom part of my chin. He doesn't hit it flush, but he clips it. Well, when he does that, he's holding like that, he clips that. You know, his momentum this way, he breaks, he lets go of this hand and kind of stumbles. Well, he's already coming back, like, you know, in an attack football tackle style. He's already heading back to where I'm at. So I'm pretty much in the corner at that point. I could do like a half a step back. I drew out and I shot. As you can tell on the 911 call, I said 2 times. It actually was 3. I didn't realize that because they were in such quick succession. I just didn't hear 3. I only heard 2, and it was very loud in the kitchen. 2 went through. 1 struck my refrigerator and then bounced and hit a wall on the other side of the kitchen. 1 hit a 24 pack of water that was directly beside my refrigerator, and 1 stayed in him. Immediately after it happened, I'm just kind of like, you know, oh, fuck, you know, what the hell just happened? So I pick up the phone, I call 911, and that's pretty much where the call picks up. Now, one thing I want to elaborate on, and the first thing that I say is I had a friend of mine in this house.
That
Yeah.
changes everything right there.
Yeah. And the reason why I said that is because I knew the guy was hurt. Right. And I didn't want him to pass away. I wanted to try to get him help. I didn't want to have to do it to begin with, but I did believe at that point in time that he was not going to stop until he killed me. He didn't say, I'm going to kick your ass. He said, I'm going to fucking kill you. So that's 2 very different things. You know, one of them you're going to be alive afterwards. The other one you're not.
Right.
And so when I got on the phone with 911, that was the only thing that come to my mind to get them just to get there. I needed them to get there. So I didn't have time to sit here and say, okay, well, let me tell you this whole backstory like I've been telling you guys, and we've been here for 48 minutes. I didn't have time to tell them this whole backstory to try to get them there. So that was just the first thing that popped in my head to get the ambulance rolling, or to whoever.
Right.
When I figured they were going to send an ambulance, a cop, and they may have done it both. The cop got there first, but that was just the first thing that popped into my head. And yeah, a lot of stuff has come up about that. You know, he called him a friend. They weren't friends. No, we were not friends. We were not friends at all. That was just the first thing that popped into my mind, with the adrenaline pumping and heart racing and everything that was going on, that I thought would be easier explained to get somebody there. And that's kind of where we were at this point until you played the 911 call.
And when you got, if you got arrested, I mean, I'm sorry. So they let you go to your friend's house or whatever. And, but when you came back, how long was it before, did they come to the house to get you, or did they tell you to come back down to the police station?
Well, when they come to the house where I was at the morning after everything, he told me I was free to return to my house. And that's when he asked me, he said, when can you come in and answer some questions? And I said, well, not without talking to my lawyer. And he said, all right, we'll facilitate that. So I never went to a police station. I did ask him, I said, so I'm free to go back. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, what about any cleanup? And he said, well, that's on you. That's not our responsibility. And that technically is true. I don't know if you guys have had any experience in that, but it's not the cop's job to do any cleanup. So if anything happens and there's blood, it's on you to get that straightened up. Fortunately, there was none. When I got back, by this time, enough time had passed. My mom had gotten wind of what happened. She had drove down. Once they left, I guess they told whoever that, they could enter the home. So when I got back, she was in there. And when we went to the area where all this happened, there was really nothing there. I mean, there may have been a little smear of blood on the hardwood floor. And I'm talking, my mom got it up with one paper towel, and that was it. That was it. That was the extent of the cleanup. Now the refrigerator was damaged because the bullet struck it, but other than that, that was it. So 2 days later, I get the phone call from the lawyer that they're filing charges. And originally he said they want you to turn yourself in at 12 o'clock tomorrow. Actually, Tuesday evening he called. I can't remember if it was Tuesday or Wednesday. Might have been 2 days after. He called me. He says they want you to turn yourself in at 12 o'clock the next day. And I'm just like, well, shit. You know, why are they doing this? And he's like, I do not know. He's like, they didn't give me a reason. He said, the only thing I'm thinking is they're going to try to spin this as like some sort of love triangle thing. And you killed him to get your wife back. And I'm just like, well, she was already coming back. I was like, you know, everybody knew that. Her family knew that. Like, you know, I wasn't the one that was upset. He was. And he's like, look, he said, I believe you. He said, but I'm just telling you what they, you know, why they may have been doing it. He said, they didn't give me a reason. He said, they want you to turn yourself in at 12 o'clock tomorrow at the county jail. I said, all right. I said, I'll call you back here in a little bit. So I started making phone calls to people that I knew and asked them who I needed to talk to about this, because obviously, like I said, I'd never been in a situation like this. And I kept getting one name thrown back at me as far as lawyers and representation. And it was a guy by the name of Andy Savage, who has a very good reputation of handling big, high-profile cases. And I contacted his law firm. By this time, it was late in the day, and I think their office was closed. So I left a message, and then probably within 30 minutes, somebody called me back. And I kind of gave them an overview of what was going on. And they said, be in Andy's office at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. And so I went in and told him everything that was going on. And he just kind of shook his head and he was like, I don't understand why we're here. He's like, he said, providing everything you're telling me is the truth. He said, I don't understand why we're here. And he said, if you're not telling me the truth, he said, everybody that I have that's going to dive into this is going to find out really quick. And I said, everything I'm telling you is the truth. And so he actually got me surrendering pushed back to, originally we got it pushed to Friday. Then later we got it pushed all the way back till Sunday. So in that time, we kind of got character letters ready. We were preparing for the bond hearing for a murder charge. A magistrate can't even see you for that. It's got to be done.
Was it going to be second-degree murder they were hitting you with?
No, murder, straight murder.
First-degree murder.
Yeah, first-degree murder. It was murder and possession of weapon during a violent crime.
But yet they were letting you stay out before you turned. It doesn't seem like they really thought it was murder.
Exactly.
They would come get you. They're not going to play around if they thought.
Well, there's a reason for that, in my opinion. It's because they want to. So they're going to try to give you the as many charges as they can, the highest level.
Yeah,
and then
they can always come down.
They can always come down, and so that's what this was. And I believe that the other thing was, I guess in Somerville where you're at, actually that's in Charleston, right? Charleston, what's the county there?
Berkeley.
That's right, Berkeley. So they don't do grand juries, do they?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, okay. So did you go before a grand jury?
I didn't. I don't know if in my case I could have went, but I know I didn't. But they did.
I mean, you wouldn't, but what I meant was, did the case go before a
finally did about 2 years, I think, after everything happened. I'm not even sure the exact time when that happened. I didn't even know that it happened. I know it was a while. I know it was at least a year before it went in front of a grand jury. Because the first thing that happened was we had a preliminary hearing. Yeah. That was the first step. Then we were going to immediately file for the self-defense hearing, the Duncan hearing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Before that happened, I think it did go to a grand jury. They did indict, but they indict everything. I mean, like very seldom.
There's a term that they'll indict a ham sandwich.
Yeah. So it's not really like the lawyer even told me, he was like, "Don't be surprised if you get indicted." He's like, everybody gets indicted. Yeah. But that was kind of the mode there. We were just kind of preparing for bond because I got lucky in the sense of, I don't know about where you guys are, but in here, the circuit court travels counties. So they'll be in Berkeley County for 1 week, then they'll be in Charleston County, then Colleton County, then, they'll travel around. They just happen to be in Berkeley County that week. So I was able to facilitate my surrender on Sunday. I think I had to be there at like 1:00. I was able to facilitate my surrender on Sunday and then be able to be seen by the judge on Monday.
And what happened when you went to see the judge?
That was a interesting experience because we had a lot of my family come down, and I don't want to make it seem like it was a party, because it obviously wasn't a party, but we had a lot of people at the house, close family. We stayed Saturday night, all cooked out. I mean, it was obviously an uncomfortable feeling because we knew what was happening the next day, but it was just, I guess, maybe a family getting together one last time sort of thing. I wake up Sunday, my mom carries me to jail and drops me off. They book me in, and I know I'm going to see the judge the next day. So I'm in the holding cell and I'm listening to a lot of these guys talk, and
don't ever do that.
What?
Because you'll hear the worst of the worst.
Oh God, yeah. Well, I didn't have a choice because they took me out of the cell, and then I was in like a holding room before you went to see the judge. And just the walk alone, man, the walk from the holding cell where they, when everybody gets checked in, you go to the holding cell until it overflows, and then you go to a pod. The walk from that cell to where they were holding court was like a dungeon. I mean, it was like the scariest fucking walk I'd ever took in my life. I'm just like, Jesus. And so we get over there and they put me in this room, and I'm hearing all these guys tell these stories. Like, I can't wait to get to Atlanta. When I see so-and-so, I'm going to stick his ass. And the other guy was happy that he was hoping that he was going to be able to plea down him setting his sister on fire. I mean, it was just, I'm sitting in the corner. I ain't saying nothing. I'm just like, oh, fuck. And I haven't been processed out yet. So I'm still in street clothes. A lot of these guys are in, your prison jumpsuits. So one guy assumed that I was in there for he's like, you must be here for family court. And I'm like, yeah, something like that. I didn't tell him. No, I didn't talk about it. So we go in there and they got me chained wrist to wrist, wrist to ankle. And this is the biggest courtroom I had ever seen in my life. Like, it was massive, huge flags. Courtroom was full of people. I was spotted, my family sitting on one side, and they bring up the judges up there. And obviously, at that point they're fighting to say that I need to be, kept in jail. I'm a danger. My lawyer's saying, he's never been in trouble in his life, been employed with the same company for 14 years. He's a father, never had any incidents. And every cop show, TV show I've watched, when a judge makes a decision, she makes it, bail granted or bail denied or bond denied. They do their fighting thing back and forth. She picks up the gavel and she's like, I'll make my decision and let you know. Bam. And she bangs the gavel. So I looked at my lawyer and I'm like, what does that mean? And he's like, I guess that means she'll let us know. And so that's it. That's all I can say. I mean, they're already carrying me back to that room. And so that guy's taking all the cuffs off and everything, because they rearrange how your cuffs are from inside to outside. Yeah. And I was like, what does that mean she'll get back to me? And he's like, you'll probably get an answer in about a week or so. And I'm like, a week? I was like, shit, that happens a whole lot faster on TV. I'm thinking this in my head. So we get back in there and they throw me back into the holding cell at this time. And about an hour and a half later, I make a call to my wife and she tells me, she says, they're giving you bond, but they probably won't get the paperwork processed until, after the time when they're going to be able to let you out. So you'll probably have to do one more night. You should get out tomorrow. And I was like, well, if I got to do one more night, I can do one more night. But I was still holding out hope that they were going to get it done. And because people were getting released as of like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. About 10:30, they opened up the door and they called my name. And, I'm like, oh, hell yeah. So I hopped down off the bed. And he's like, we're transferring you to the C-Pod. And I'm just like, I'm supposed to be getting out of here tomorrow. Like, is this really necessary? Like, I don't understand if this is going to set something back. And he's like, nah, it don't matter. He said, ain't got nothing to do with that. He said, it's just an order of when you come in. Once we get a certain amount in here, we have to transfer who's been in here the longest out. So then I get my, orange jumpsuit and my bag of goodies, the toilet paper, the cup, the 3-in-1 body wash, shampoo, conditioner. And they send me into the pod. And I go to try to find a space, and I spot the guy that set his sister on fire, who was happy because he only got a 15-year sentence when he was facing 30. And I asked him if I could bunk up above him because, of course, all the bottom ones were taken. Everybody likes the bottom. And, just got up there and just kind of just took a breath and soaked it all in. I knew I was getting out, but at the same time, I'm still sitting there staring at the ceiling like, I'm not supposed to be here. I didn't do anything wrong. And I never thought this was going to happen. Like I knew CWP laws. I mean, when you take those courses and you get those permits, like your test, your quiz, you're given scenarios of this guy was in the right, this guy was in the wrong. You know, when you shoot someone and the threat is eliminated, that's it. I can't shoot you, break in my house. I can't put 3 in you, then you fall on the ground and then I go put 4 more. That is murder, because after the 3, the threat was eliminated. You were no threat to me. I got the right to go up and put 4 more in you. You know, so many people are uneducated.
Plus, you're in South Carolina, which is a friendly state when it comes to
Yes, and you would think that. I mean, that's what I thought until that point.
Yeah, I have a gun. I have a concealed handgun permit from Texas, and I've had it for, oh my God, 10 years, and it's transferable to other states. And I'm assuming
reciprocity or whatever it is they call it.
Yeah, right. And so you're correct. I think every state, pretty much, you have to have a certain number of hours of training, plus you got to be able to use the weapon and everything. And so you're taught, you know, when you can and can't use the weapon. And so, yeah, it really surprised me that you were charged with murder. I'm not surprised, though, that you see, they only need probable cause to do so a reasonable person that would say that a crime was committed, they can have charges. So, you know, it may not be murder. I didn't think it would be murder. I could have seen maybe manslaughter, and then it would have, you know, got disposed, you know, like it did. But I'm very surprised it went to a homicide.
I did too, because that's premeditation. You know, that's planning. That's all this being planned. And I'm like, you know, I didn't reach out to that guy that night. I was at home in my bed. He reached out to me, you know? It was his idea to come back here. And I was fine with that because I didn't want to send him back over there to where my wife and kid were, you know.
Well, I'll be honest with you guys, someone that dealt with the law my whole life. Well, not my whole life. I've been a good boy for some years now, but I'm not surprised because they go for the big one to get it down. They literally charged me with kidnapping, and there was no evidence of kidnapping, and then the charges got dropped.
Right.
And James, this may or may not have something to do with it, but I found out after the fact that the detective that was over this case was a newly promoted detective.
Right.
That before this had worked more of a domestic violence type stuff. I was her first murder case.
Yeah.
And obviously she jumped the gun a little bit because just the fact that I said, hey, I done this in self-defense. At that point, the state has a duty to investigate if I acted in self-defense. It's not even to the point of, okay, was this murder? What they have a duty to investigate. Did he act in self-defense? Right. Obviously, within 48 hours of them charging me with murder, they didn't do a fucking thing. No. They didn't test nothing. They didn't run nothing because regardless of what CSI Miami does or all those shows, it takes weeks to get tested back. It takes, I don't think we got the ballistics and everything as far as like his blood alcohol level and all that stuff. But it was close to a year before we got all that stuff back because of the backlog and everywhere that it has. They didn't do any sort of testing. And
how much was your bail?
It was $150,000 total. So I had to come up with, I think I went up coming up with about 12 to get out. Typically it's 15%, but given the lawyer that I had, the relationship that he had with the bondsman, they knocked it from 15 to 12. Now that's the lowest they could have charged me because a murder charge, you can go on up to multiple millions. They charged me with 100,000 for the murder charge. And it was a weapons charge along with it. So it was possession of weapon during a violent crime. So that was 50,000. So together it was the lowest they could give for both charges. It was 100.
Have you ever thought about what must happen to people when they can't afford? They're in your situation. They're sitting there and they can't afford their bail.
All the time.
They're going to sit there until that gets. And how long did it take you to get to the actual trial because of COVID? COVID came in and slowed everything down, right?
Never even went to trial. 4.5 years, we never went to trial. So that was the thing. And you're absolutely right, because I'm very blessed that I was with a company that was that gave profit sharing checks once a year. So I would get a disbursement into my profit sharing. Now, I obviously had a lot of family support when this happened. So they were able to round up the bond pretty quick between everybody. They were able to round that up pretty quick to get me out. As far as meeting with the lawyer and signing up with the lawyer, it's like $50,000 to take the case.
Right.
Then they need, 15,000 retainer to go ahead and start everything. Now, I was still employed when I got bonded out. When I reported back to work, that employment immediately ended because they fired me for the charges right off the bat. So
what type of work did you do?
I was in the steel industry. I worked for Nucor Steel. It was a pretty big steel.
So this whole murder charge basically cost you your freedom. It cost you a lot of money. Financially, it had to wreck you.
Fuck yeah. Yeah. I wiped out my whole 401k. Like, see, you can't get into your 401k, while you're still working there.
Right.
But being that they fired me, that opened the door for me to be able to draw it out. So between the government getting their end, because your early withdrawal penalties, I drew out everything that I had. I paid the lawyer off in full. I reimbursed people that paid for my bond. I didn't want them to be out of any money. I paid off the car that I was driving at the time, which wasn't much, and I think I paid off like one credit card. I want to say it may have left me with like $3,000. And my thing is, I'm gonna need that to live, because I don't know when the next time I'll be able to find a job with this hanging over my head. But everything was paid for.
And you're thinking about getting back with your wife also, and you're running into these money issues.
Yeah. So luckily, her employment wasn't affected. She made pretty decent. So that obviously, we did move back in together. That obviously sped it up pretty quick. So we moved back in together, and she's like, don't worry, I'll get a second job if I have to until we can figure out what's going on. And that was kind of the first mode of thinking is to get another employment. I did get a job, and I actually told the guy when I hired him what was going on. And he said, I took a little criminal justice in college. It doesn't sound like you've done anything wrong. He's like, it doesn't bother me. I go, if it doesn't bother you, then, good. I just wanted to let you know, because I've never had to tell anybody about anything like this before. Well, when it runs through corporate flags it, they see it's a pending charge, they rescind the offer, pull the offer to the job. So I knew right then and there I was going to not be able to go anywhere that runs a background, which drastically changes your options. Very, very slim at that point. I was able to get on with a sign company that installed and fabricated signs. And I think the only reason they probably didn't run the background is Nucor Steel is a pretty reputable steel company. So somebody that leaves there, they look at as, obviously, why did you get fired or whatever? And I told him that I quit. I said, it was the shift work was kind of getting to me. I wanted to spend a little bit more time with my kid, which none of that was a lie, but they did actually fire me. I didn't tell them I got fired.
Yeah.
And so he says, now, you get a kick out of this. He's like, okay, well, obviously coming from there, you got a good work history. He's like, we'd love to have you. So I start, everything's going good, learning the trades, enjoying the sign installation. We're about 6 months in, and they said, oh, we got a big contract with your former employer. And I'm like, who? And he said, Nucor. He's like, they're getting a big LED sign. We're putting it in. I'm like, you got to be shitting me. And sure enough, at that time, I wasn't a full installer. I spent most of the time in the shop. They go out there, they strike up a conversation that I work there. Oh, he used to work out here. How'd everything go with that case? What case? And then, so they found nobody ever, I knew that people knew because I had a few people that asked me about it. The owner of the company, it was a smaller, company. The owner of the company never asked me about it. I think by that time he could tell I was a good worker. I wasn't, a troublemaker, or anything like that. But I knew that he knew, because when jobs would come up to where we had to go on military bases, which was often, they never sent me, because you have to have your background run when you go to those jobs. Every other job I would go, but that one, he never would send me. So I knew he knew. But that was another thing that added anxiety to it too, because I'm like, is the day when I come in, is he going to pull me in there and say, why didn't you tell me about this? We got to let you go. We don't want this around here. And it was just like, I can't give you a day that I woke up and didn't have an ulcer type feeling from that. And that's not even getting into the actual case of the charges that's hanging over my head, because these ain't peanuts charges here. This is, life in prison. So that's it was the worst time period in
And
my
then
life.
on top of that, Wade, COVID hits.
Yes. Yeah. So that was, I was working at that sign company up until that. When COVID hit, they let me go due to lack of work.
And then I want to ask you one other question. He was killed in April. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you had your friend who committed suicide in August.
No, the guy that committed suicide killed himself earlier that year in July. So the suicide happened, and then this incident happened.
Okay, so the guy that committed suicide, he did it after the shooting, right?
No, he did it before.
Oh,
That happened before. Yeah.
Okay, so you had that on your mind, and this happened.
Yeah.
So then COVID happens, which is very serious. At this point, did you think that you also had the fear of going to prison?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of where I got into this podcasting, because before this, I didn't even listen to podcasts. And there's nobody that's going to learn law or, things about the justice system quicker than somebody that's in the thick of shit. And so I start researching, everybody tells me, oh, don't worry about it. That everything's going to work out. Well, that's easy for you to say. It ain't your ass to look for it. And so I start researching wrongful convictions, which might not have been the brightest thing, because it didn't just give me the best of feelings.
Right.
But it gave me the knowledge that this happens, and it happens a lot more than people realize.
My man, I've been through it. It's a very serious job charges that I was absolutely innocent of. It happens all the time.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, Lee, if you don't have money, you're fucked. Because I was fortunate enough to have the money to pay that lawyer to have him to back me. But had I been, someone that didn't have that availability to those kind of funds, you're stuck with a public defender. A public defender is nothing more than a glorified plea dealer.
That's it.
Yep. That's all they want to do.
All they want to do is come in and get you a plea deal, and they dangle that carrot. Because, all right, look, man, you're looking at 25 years. If you just plea out, you'll get 15. Good behavior, maybe go home in 12, and that's something that people take.
And was Liam's family looking for you to get crucified?
I do not know. They did not live in this area. They live somewhere in the Pennsylvania area. I never spoke with them, to them, about anything. I don't really know their feelings on it. Obviously, I guess it's, that they probably don't care for me. But the gist that I got was, it wasn't a shock that they heard that it happened. That doesn't necessarily mean they still don't blame me, but the feeling that I kind of got was they were waiting for that phone call in some fashion.
Yeah. He was moving, he was doing a lot of things. I mean, you're talking roid rage, you're talking medication.
Yeah.
You're talking mental illness, all within one person.
Yeah, and then you mix it all together that night. You got steroid prescription pills.
What do you think happens to you if you don't have that gun on you?
I'm probably not here, and maybe my wife isn't here, or my daughter, or my son, because I played this through a lot of times, Lee, and I'm like, had it went the other way in that kitchen, and he kills me, he's at 100% invested to kill me. He knows that obviously they're going to know he done it. What's going to stop him from going back over to that other house, going in, taking out my wife, taking out my daughter, taking out my son, and then maybe taking out himself? Yeah. How many times do you see that happen?
Well, that's what would have probably happened. And two, the alcohol does a whole lot, because I've known people that they'll be fine, and then they can just change on a dime, just immediately. And it's just crazy to me. And then I am curious, so you said he had stopped breathing, but then you said he was making noises. Was did they say he died there in the
Technically,
house?
No, he did. I guess they
called
the
hospital.
time of death
at the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably because you have to have a medical examiner has to declare him dead. They can't. Yeah.
I do know that there was some work done at the hospital. As far as the particulars of what it was done, I don't know, but
Right.
he technically was alive, vital-wise, until he arrived at the hospital, and then they called it.
It doesn't, this is what people don't understand. It doesn't, we never know when our life's going to take that dramatic turn at any moment. We could be the most innocent person in the world.
Yeah. Shit
happens.
I mean, dude, I'm at this point in time, I'm as high as you could get, like mental feeling wise. I've got this procedure done on my back, so I know I'm not fit to be in any pain. Me and my wife decided we're going to get back together. The job is going good. I obviously, I'm thinking around that time, I had like done real good. I like to place a wager or two on football. Had a great football season, had a great basketball season. March Madness that ended,
and your show's going good. Your show's growing.
I didn't have the show at that time. I didn't have the show when this happened. But I was really just on top of the world, so to speak. And just like you said, in the blink of an eye, all that was gone. Just
has what happened to you made you adjust and think different about how you're going to control your life now?
Definitely. I mean, it's made me think of a lot of things different. Like I was one of those guys to where if I was watching something on TV and I see, so-and-so arrested, I was like, well, damn, he must've did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Not anymore, because I know that arrest don't mean shit.
Right.
Arrest don't mean, and I'm not one of these people that's going to say every person that gets arrested is innocent.
No,
I know that's not the case, but I am a person that says I need to know facts before I make an assumption, because I think that's what this detective did. I think she made assumptions before she got facts, and everything ballistically lined up with exactly what I said. The way my kitchen is set up, the corner that I was in, one of the shells that was ejected from the gun landed in the sink. They found it in the drain. So that lets you know that I had to be where I said it was. Otherwise, a cartridge is not going to wind up in that sink.
Didn't a district attorney have to sign off on it, though?
A solicitor did. We have solicitors here, and they had to at some point.
So I guess they just go with what the detective
That's
says
what I'm kind of picking up. Because also too, the entrance and exit wounds painted the story, because you have a higher entrance wound and a lower exit wound. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
Either I'm holding the gun like this, you know what I'm saying, way high up, or he's coming at me.
Yeah.
So it's going to enter higher and exit lower.
And
so everything was there.
And you had to be nervous that he was going to gain control of that gun at one point.
Oh, absolutely. I knew if I pulled it that I had to use it, because had he got to me, he would have took that and done whatever. I mean, I'm sure you guys have probably seen that movie Carlito's Way. Yep. And he tells Sean Penn, he's like, you're going to wave that thing at the wrong guy and they're going to take it from you and bury it up your ass. And they tell you that in the school too. They say, if you pull this gun, you need to be ready to use it, because if you pull it and you second guess yourself and you decide not to, or decide to use it as a threat, somebody skilled enough can take that from you, and then they're going to use it on you, and then they'll be within their right.
And when he grabbed you, could you feel his strength compared to yours?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they say that with two UFC fighters. They're fighting, and then one guy can feel how much stronger the other guy is.
I mean, when he went at me and got up under that chin, I went straight up off my feet onto the damn stove, which, I mean, you really didn't have to go up a whole lot, because the way my stove was, if you go up just a little bit, you're already going to be sitting on top of it. And with it being a slick glass top, that made it a little bit easier too. I just kind of slid straight.
How much do you weigh?
At that point in time, I was probably about 215.
Okay. And he was bigger than you.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you were 215.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
He was probably 6'1", 6'2", at least, probably 230, 240. So he had about 15, 20 pounds on me, definitely a couple of inches. I mean, if the weight was any closer, it wasn't because I was in shape. It would have been probably because of all the beer or something. I can tell you that. It wasn't because I was any kind of physical shape.
You get the feeling that no matter how that night ended, it was going to end bad one way or another?
Looking back on it the way it did, yeah. I mean, I think one or two things was going to happen there that night. Either things happened the way it did, or it happened like I said it probably could have, because there's no doubt in my mind that if he would have killed me, I don't think nobody would have stopped until the other one was Yeah, I knew somebody wasn't coming out of that kitchen.
And when he grabbed you, and you said he seen your gun originally, did you ever think that maybe he seen the gun and wanted you to shoot him?
I've thought that. I've thought that it was almost.
That's what I was thinking
You
too.
hear the term suicide by cop. You know,
Yep.
you know if you do something, somebody's going to do it. I've often pondered that he knew that if he pushed me to that I would do it, and it would be a way out. I've thought that. Whether that's true, I got no idea. But
he was losing everything. He was losing
Exactly.
his woman. He was losing everything.
So
that's what I was thinking.
That's a way to go out to really stick it to me on the way out.
Yeah.
And what happened? And you said he left the stuff at your wife, including a service dog. It was at your wife's house.
Yeah.
What happened to the service dog?
His family was notified. Obviously, you know, when everything happened, and some of them come down, and I think the service dog went with one of them, and then they got what belongings of his that they wanted, and that was it.
And when did you find out that the case was not going to be prosecuted?
It was a very long time. Like I said, this happened in April. We had a preliminary hearing that took place in June. The preliminary hearing was kind of.
So we say this happened in 2017. It started the whole
18.
I'm sorry, 2018, and now we're up to 22.
Yeah, we're up to 22 now. The preliminary hearing happened in June of that same year.
Right.
So just a couple months. We had the preliminary hearing fairly quickly. The detective lied under oath on the stand 5 different times on that throughout different matters of the case. And I don't just say she's lying and you take my word. These are documented things. I mean, some of them aren't huge, but she said she collected a vial of steroids, you know, from the house when her report that she filled out said she collected 2 vials. She said that I locked myself out of my house when I come out to meet that officer. And that's untrue because he walked right in the front door. So, and there was some other things in there. So, you know, it's just, it's minuscule stuff, but it's still like you're not showing the best, I guess, credibility by lying on simple things like that. But then after that, we never went back to a courtroom. We were right. The judge at the end of the preliminary hearing even said, she said, there's really not a lot here, but she said, given the circumstances, I'm going to bind it to trial. So the next stop for us was the immunity hearing in the castle law.
Yeah.
And that just never happened. Obviously COVID played a part in pushing that off because my lawyer said he didn't want to do anything over Zoom or Skype or anything like that. And in the middle of this, like I said, that's when I started diving into wrongful convictions, things like that.
Yeah.
We had a forensics investigator that come down from New York that came to the house that lined up and, you know, done the lasers where you can see bullet paths and stuff like that. He done that in my house that lined up and backed up everything that I said because he done the origin point to the refrigerator to over to the wall. So it just backtraced that and it puts me standing right where I said I was. So all those things kind of help corroborate my story.
Yeah.
But still never went back to trial. And in between there, I started the podcast. 2021. So that was going good. 2022, had opportunity to go to New York to do some things. And at that point, the solicitor had changed. The detective on the case had been demoted. She's actually now the esteemed security resource officer at an elementary school in this local area.
Wow.
So not necessarily.
You almost got put away by a middle school
elementary school.
Elementary. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, part of it is that Berkeley County, where you're at, especially in Somerville, violent crime is nearly unheard of, and so at least what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, it's North Charleston is a worser area for that. I mean, it happens, but it's definitely not a everyday occurrence. And
so, was it the Somerville police or was it the county that actually came on scene?
It was county because it was Berkeley County. Even though they consider the town I'm in, Somerville, it's a little bit.
It's unincorporated or something,
It's Berkeley County was the one that handled it, and I'll throw this out there too, just to let you have a little bit more kind of understanding of how this case was handled. You remember I told you that 2 bullets went through. One hit the refrigerator, one hit the wall, the other one went in the water. The detective never found the one that went in the water. I found it after I got out of jail.
Oh, wow.
And so we had to call them to come back out to collect that evidence. So I think right then and there, they knew that this wasn't going to be the most rock solid thing they had ever come across.
They were just hoping that somehow during this process that you would have either gotten, I guess, you know, tired of it overhanging you, and then maybe you would agree to some sort of plea. They would have even been happy if you would have agreed for probation.
Yeah,
you know,
and I think that means
they would have done. Yeah, that would have been a conviction, because the only thing they care about is win or lose.
Yeah,
a lot of people would take felony probation not to go to jail or not to face that murder charge.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Lee. I mean, it was something that I had to think about, because my lawyer told me that, you know, there's a good possibility they're going to offer some sort of a plea deal. He said, obviously they don't come with the lowest thing, but he said they may offer, you know, involuntary manslaughter and then say time served, because we're at 4 years now, going almost 4 years. They could say, all right, involuntary manslaughter, but time served, you do no jail time, everything's over, you go on with your life.
But it still has a conviction, though.
Yeah, it's
on your record.
And your lawyer is going to, if you go on trial, your lawyer is going to say, well, this police officer has been demoted.
Exactly.
So it's going to make the police department, the best thing for them to do is get rid of this.
And that's what happened. And part of it was due to the solicitor did change as well as the detective. Yeah. Once I made that trip to New York, I had to reach out and ask permission. And that kind of started a conversation, because at this point, my lawyer and the solicitor hadn't really spoken about this case. And so he said, hey, my client's got, you know, a legit reason to go to New York. He's only going to be up there for a couple of days. And then he was like, while we're at it, you know, where are we at on this? This has been about 4.5 years. And the guy was like, well, let me kind of catch up on it and I'll get back with you. So this was in like June. I wound up having to go back to New York about 3 months later in September. At that point in time, he's like, hey, you know, can he get permission to go back again? He's like, yeah, no problem. I mean, just like, yeah, just let me fly all over the state, you know, willy-nilly. Yeah. Well, we set up a thing for us to meet. And my lawyer said, you know, I don't really do this very often. He said, but I'm willing in this case, because I feel so strongly that I will lay everything out that I have. He said, if you'll meet, I will give you a PowerPoint presentation of why these charges are bogus. We'll bring you to his house, let you see his kitchen, let you lay everything on the table. And we believe it'll be powerful enough that you guys will drop it. So that's what we agreed to do. Our forensics guy showed him a PowerPoint, and it basically, every reason they said they charged me, they had a reason why that was inaccurate. So like one of the things was, you know, he said there was a struggle, yet there was no signs of a struggle. Well, when the first officer comes in, you can see clearly that there's a knocked over shot glass on the ground, on the floor. You can see that there's a knocked over glass, rocks, Manhattan glass on the counter. So that's obviously signs of a struggle. Otherwise, I just keep a very dirty house. He said that, you know, that there wasn't any blowback or blood spatter on him because he was wearing a white t-shirt. So we don't think they were really that close together. Well, he was wearing 3 shirts. He had on like a regular shirt, then a long sleeve wicking shirt, and then kind of a thin hooded shirt over that. So you're not going to get a lot of blood transfer back through 3 layers, because the type of ammunition that was in this gun was full metal jackets. So they're just going straight through and through. It's not a hollow point that's going to just, you know, explode back.
So you had 3, there were 3 bullets, and you said 2. So one went into his chest, right? I guess the heart, and one in the stomach.
I don't think the one that hit, I think from reading over the medical reports, I believe they said hit the spine. I don't think anything ever hit the heart.
Okay, the spine, and then, but it went, so the 3rd bullet missed.
No, they all hit.
So he got shot 3 times.
Yeah, they all hit. 2 just went in and out.
Through, okay. So one of the 2 hit the refrigerator, the other one hit the water, and the 3rd one was lodged in the spine.
And out of those shots, how many did they determine were kill shots?
I mean, I don't know if they did. I think one of them went through a lung, and so it was a lot of like internal organ damage. So I never heard that this one was it, because I don't even know if they would be able to tell which one was fired first, second, or third.
Right.
And
so we've been talking about an hour and a half about this, and I mean, you laid a lot out there, and it's appreciated. I mean, it's not easy for you to do this. I don't know I know you've done some interviews on this once before. Actually, who was it that you did an interview with first?
I did one with Matt Cox first,
Right.
Inside True Crime, Matt Cox out of Tampa. And then I was on the Concrete podcast with Danny. So he's got a pretty big platform. I think he's like 600 and something thousand subscribers over there. So obviously doing very well. And I've done both of those shows when I was down there in Tampa.
And then you came to the best podcast.
I came to Lico.
Okay, you came to, it's like, no, actually, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do yours, but I felt like I could ask you questions that they didn't ask you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think there's a lot of different ways to do a podcast, as you know. You can let the guests kind of run it, or you can be a little bit, more on the inquisitive side. So there's a lot of you can do podcasts multiple different ways. And, I knew that Lee was going to bring in some questions that maybe those guys didn't ask. And I'm fine with this because, I read the comments on a lot of stuff, and I've seen people say, this guy talks and it doesn't seem like he don't have any remorse. I've got a ton of remorse, but at the end of the day, I've never looked at it as I killed a man. I looked at it as I survived someone trying to kill me. So I can't have a whole lot of remorse for someone that was wanting to kill me.
The shame part, and the toughest part is that he was a soldier. He went through. It's obvious he went through a lot of stress in his life, and unfortunately, you were two guys that met at the wrong time.
Yeah,
your paths collided. Yeah, and if he didn't collide with you, there was a good chance he was going to collide with somebody else.
And that's what I was mentioning earlier when I think that phone call was expected. If it hadn't have been me, it would have been somebody else eventually. Over something. It may have been the other way around when that person, maybe he would have taken somebody else out. I've always just, and I think that's been how I've been able to process this whole thing is I've never looked at it as I killed somebody. I've looked at it as I survived someone that was trying to kill me. I look at myself as a survivor, definitely not a murderer. I'm not a murderer. I haven't, I've never killed anything in my life. I mean, I don't even like killing animals, for God's sake.
How's your wife handling this?
She's obviously carried a lot of a guilt for this whole thing, but I've tried to tell her, I'm like, look, this happens, not this particular scenario, but people break up and get back together all the time.
That's life. I mean,
and you should almost know that if you're coming into a situation where people have just split up after a long period of time of being together, there's a high probability they're probably going to get back together at some point. People leave, they need a break, and they get back together. I gave Lee this example. I mean, him, we're talking on the phone. I said, J-Lo was with Ben Affleck. She left. She went to a few other people. She left Alex Rodriguez to go back to Ben Affleck. Alex Rodriguez didn't try to beat Ben Affleck to death with a damn baseball bat. You accept that these people want to be with each other and you move on. Had he and my wife decided to stay together, I would have had to accept that.
But you were willing to.
Yeah. I didn't want that to happen, but had that been, the scenario that played out, I would have had no choice because I still got to go to work.
What kind of relationship did he have with your children while he was with your wife?
I mean, my son didn't really talk to him a whole lot. I mean, he obviously knew him. I think it was just so fresh and so new. I don't think he really knew how much to get involved. Obviously he was around them some, but I mean, they never got to the point to where like, he would go riding with them or anything like that.
They were only together a couple of months.
Yeah.
When they moved in November and December. And
November, December, and by January, he was still coming around, but he wasn't living there full time at the home.
Right. And she had already, by January, was already saying, this probably isn't going to work with him.
Yeah.
And so did you get your, so what happened with your handgun permit, your concealed handgun permit?
I was about to ask you that.
Well, they obviously, after the charge, I got a letter saying that they were revoking it and, whatever due to the felony. But after everything got dropped, my record got expunged and I filed for it to come back. So I will have it back. It's not back yet, but it should be back any day now, really.
So when did you request the last year?
Immediately. As soon as I could, I asked for it.
So November, or so you got out in November of 2022, right? So it was dropped.
I got dropped in November 2022.
So the arrest has also been expunged then.
Yes, everything is off the record. The only
Okay.
thing that's really going to be there now is articles that was posted from news outlets and such. The arrest has been expunged from the record.
But it will always sit with you, unfortunately.
Yeah,
It's something, you know, unfortunately, that's the thing. You know, you could be found innocent of charges, but we live in a world now where it's so easy to find things out. And we have a world now where people think you're guilty when they read something.
Yeah, and that's, man, you wouldn't believe the stuff that I seen put on Facebook, and you know, people that didn't know me and didn't have any
yes, I
about
will.
this whole situation.
James will tell you. James will tell you some of the stuff that I go through here. It's believe me.
And I mean,
It's
even
horrible.
even from public defenders, like there was a situation around 2020 where I own a Siberian Husky and a pit bull that lived, or he was a pet of someone that lived like 2 houses down from me, that had been known to bite individuals. It bit my son in the past, not a huge bite, but a bite. Got loose, got in my yard, and roughed up my Husky pretty good. Well, somehow or another, the news media got wind of it. And because this is an area with a lot of kids, they reached out to me and asked me if they could do a story on it. And I said, well, you can, but I don't want you to interview me. I'd rather have you interview my daughter. Number one, because I didn't want to be on the news. And number two, I wasn't home. My daughter was. So she would have been able to be better telling what happened. So the interview took place. Somebody shares it on a neighborhood website of, you know, my community. And this lady comes on and she's like, you know, I'm not sure how, but I know that this girl is related to the guy that shot the man in his kitchen, claimed self-defense, and then went and got one of the best defense attorneys in Charleston. And, you know, he's claiming he's innocent, but the evidence shows a very different story. And I'm like, who the fuck is this? And so I go to searching on this woman. She's an assistant public defender with Berkeley County. She works as a public defender, and she's on her shit. And she starts saying that, you know, I'm a public defender. I know this and that. And one of the people even said, you know, if you're a public defender, you probably shouldn't be saying these things on a public forum. And she had a few cocktails. This probably wasn't the time nor the place, but it is.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, Jesus Christ, you're trying to poison the whole damn, you know, community against me right now.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you know something. You came in here with the worst of the worst charges, and you're going to get your trolls, unfortunately. But the fact of the matter is, you're a free man. You got your life going good, and nobody's happy that this young man died. Right. You're not happy. It's just a sad thing. A lot of families get destroyed when these things happen, and they don't recover. But the fact, it's like you said, though, you're alive. You felt like he was going to kill you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he said as much, you know, and I didn't know that man well enough to not take him at his word. And we as men, you know, sometimes our bravado will get the best of us, and we might say one thing, you know, this, that, right. But when you physically put hands on someone and say those things, that's another level. Yeah. You know, it takes things to a different avenue.
He was going to do, he was definitely wasn't playing around, and you had the right to defend yourself. So, I mean, what other way could you defend yourself? There wasn't another way.
There wasn't.
So
I'm sure if you felt like you could take him physically, maybe you would have tried.
Yeah, I would have tried. And I mean, if it had been, we could have done that a long time before this. And he knew that I had that surgery. Problems. He knew that I'd had that surgery recently. So he knew that I was probably a little bit, you know, well, I say a little bit, a lot less than 100%. So that did, again, brings back what you two guys have brought up. And I've never really mentioned that because I didn't want it to try to seem like I was throwing another scenario out there. But being that y'all brought it up, that again lends it to me. If he thought, well, I know that if I push it to this level, he might just go ahead and do it and, you know, possibly do me a favor, so to speak. You know, maybe mentally he was ready to check out. I doubt, no idea. You know, I don't know.
We'll never know. I mean, maybe he never knew to the last second. I mean, when you're mentally ill and you have issues, I mean, he has a lot of issues that a lot of soldiers coming home have.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because it's sad that they go over there, they defend this country, then they come back and they don't get the proper, you know, health care and medical care that they need to be able to function in society. So in his case and a lot of other people's cases, it's a situation to where the government that they went over there to protect has failed them.
Right. And you got to remember too, a lot of soldiers that come home here get killed here because of situations like this. This is not one story about one soldier. You can read them all the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they get through the war over there. They come home here and they get killed here. But you know something, I like to, first of all, why don't you tell us about your channel, what you got planned, and where people can go if they want to watch your stuff.
Okay. The channel's Crime and Entertainment. As I said, you know, when I started researching wrongful convictions, I was going to do a true crime podcast, but everybody else seemed to have that idea at that time too. So I twisted it a little bit and put Crime and Entertainment, which was really the best thing I could have done, because it's allowed me to talk with everybody from actors to writers to authors to, you know, former guys that have been in the mob, like, you know, Lee's had on, to cops, the flip side, you know, ATF agents, FBI agents.
I've had them on too.
Yeah. You know, adult performers, adult entertainers, people in the.
I haven't had them on.
Yeah. Well, I got a few numbers. But it's just allowed me so many opportunities to talk with people, because I'm a very social person. So this whole time I've been on house arrest. You know, I couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. So it was driving me batshit
And you
crazy.
really couldn't talk about it.
Yeah, I couldn't. So the podcast was an outlet originally to let me have conversations with people via the computer, you know, and a lot of the stuff I'm into, you know, I've always been a fan of, you know, a lot of these people that I've interviewed from The Sopranos. I was a huge Sopranos fan, from The Wire, Sons of Anarchy. So it's really been cool. It's really been, you know, very surreal to talk with some of these people. We've gotten to go to New York and shoot some things. So cool. As far as what we got coming down the pipe, a lot of good interviews that are coming up. I was able to get Gianni Russo on the show, who was in The Godfather. He played Carlo in The Godfather.
Oh, he screwed me over about a year ago.
Really? You never got to interview?
No, I got to interview. And 15 minutes before he was supposed to come on, he backed out.
Oh, wow.
And that was a year ago. That was when my channel was just starting to grow.
Wow.
So
I mean, there was no way I was not gonna, you know, hop on an opportunity to, you know, to interview with someone that was in The Godfather. I mean, arguably one of the best movies that's ever been made.
Not even that. The rest of his life.
Yeah, the rest of the story is that's just the.
I won't say. I've got an opinion on the stories, but you need to have the interview.
No matter what you think about his stories.
Yeah.
The guy has a lot of things have happened to that man in life that has not happened to anybody else.
That's true.
I mean,
true.
He was part of The Godfather. He actually got his butt kicked by James Caan in an iconic role. So, you know, it's he's the one that got James Caan killed. So, you know, that character, we could say whatever we want about Gianni Russo, but that character exists.
Yeah, a lot of facts. And you know, just it's opened the door for a lot of cool stuff. So I've got a project working with an author named Doug Pegram. We're kind of going to do like a 10 show series where we talked about, there was a case in Arkansas called the Boys on the Tracks a long time ago, where two boys were found run over on a railroad track.
Yeah.
And when you look a little bit deeper into it, it was actually tied into the Clintons and drug running that was going on with Barry Seal.
Be careful where you go. Be careful where you go on YouTube. Yeah,
and that kind of led us into a rabbit hole, because I heard him talking about the Boys on the Tracks, and I was like, well, we need to do a show on that. And he was like, well, if you do one on that, you got to do one on Barry, and if you do one on Barry, you need to do one on JFK. So I was just like, we need to do like a 10 episode set. So we've got about 4 done. I'm not going to release them until they're all done. Then I'm going to do them back to back. So just a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipe. So we're on Crime Entertainment over on YouTube. We're on all the audio platforms too. So whatever you listen to, Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher.
And I'll put all your information underneath here. And I like to say, this is where I always get in trouble. Please hit the like, hit the subscribe, because half the time my dumb ass don't say it.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank you for being on here. This is really great stuff. James, is there anything that you would like to say to Wade before we leave?
No, just thank you very much for telling your story. I really appreciate you coming out here. Is very a sad story, but at the same time, I am glad that you've been able to overcome that, and that you're able to at least try to move on with your life, and that you've got also a family. So
I'm going to end this, but if you can hang here for a minute, Wade, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the show.